Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for aligning the curriculums for college success. My name is Carl Andrews. I am a reference and instruction librarian with Bronx Community College, City University of New York. I am also the library liaison for our first year seminar program at BCC.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dickens Hilaire. I'm a chemistry teacher at Bronx Community College of City University of New York.
Okay, I'm going to begin to share my screen. One moment. Okay. So let me just inform you, this is a retrospective presentation. The work, the research, everything was already implemented, and we're sharing this model with you all in hopes that perhaps you can take this idea back to your respective campuses and implement it with your partnering high schools or colleges. All right. Many students enter college lacking the necessary research and critical thinking skills needed for academic success. There's a strong body of literature that shows evidence that information literacy instruction at the secondary level enhances college readiness in freshman students. The authors, myself and Professor St. Hilaire, discuss the importance of collaborative curriculum development and the role academic libraries play in supporting college readiness. The research will review and cite successful high school and college partnerships, curriculum development initiatives, secondary information literacy instruction, and teacher professional development. The utilization of select library databases as a tool to promote college readiness is also discussed. So the goals for this project, and remember this is in retrospect, was to implement a professional development collaborative where high school teachers, college professors, and librarians work to revise and align curricular units that support college readiness. We also aim to establish professional and ongoing relationships between the BCC librarians, subject professors, and the feeder high school teaching faculty. To revise secondary curriculum units and assignments to enhance retention and completion rates in future BCC students. So we were trying to reach the cohort before they became the cohort. To develop communities of practice among high school teachers, librarians, and college instructors. To bring light to the role of libraries and librarians as curriculum supporters, to show the world that we're more than just a service entity. And also to provide a collaborative model for high school and college faculty and librarians that serve their institutions. So the partnerships. When we recruited, this was grant funded, and we recruited participants from the high schools and the college. And in that recruitment, we used language similar to this. Ideally for this type of a project, everyone needs to be on board. The high school and college librarians should ideally both have an interest in college readiness initiatives. The high school librarian ideally is a certified school media specialist with at least 3 years of experience working in a high school. The college librarian will have experience working with freshman students, library outreach, and collaboration. And both will work with the group to develop a rubric, an information literacy rubric, while infusing information literacy into the secondary curricular unit. The high school teachers we desired will bring their pedagogical knowledge of their content areas and familiarity with the high school environment. He, she, they can teach in any subject, but for the iteration when we started it, we were looking for a STEM teacher, a STEM high school teacher. They should be open to sharing a curricular unit that they are currently working on or plan to implement in the near future. And they should also be open to feedback from the college professor, the librarians, and the group facilitator. The college professors, ideally, will bring their experience from the higher education end. They will share their course syllabus with the group and will also be open to feedback from the high school teacher, the librarian, and the group facilitator. We recruited a documentarian to record everything that we did, and we were fortunate enough to find someone in our English department at Bronx Community College to take notes and record all of the activities during the work. And that turned out to be fantastic because it informed the paper that we wrote. And then we also recruited a facilitator, a group facilitator, to lead us. They initiated dialogue among the group, posed discussion questions, implemented group activities, and guided us through the curricular revision process. All of these people got paid for the work that they did. Okay. So in a nutshell, if you see this Venn diagram, it's just this simple. This is not etched in stone. This can be changed any way that works best for your campus, your community, but this is what we used. And so in this example, a BCC professor, a feeder high school librarian, a subject high school librarian, and a BCC librarian. So if you could imagine, if you're at SUNY Binghamton, if you're at Oswego, so it would be the Oswego librarian and Oswego professor, so forth and so on. And we called it the Bronx Community College Library High School Collaborative. So in a nutshell, if we had more money, we could have expanded this workshop beyond the 5 sessions. We sat for 5 two-hour sessions, and in each of those sessions, this is basically what we pretty much implemented, the work that we did. So for the first session, we share and discuss educational values and teaching challenges. It's the icebreaker session. We get to laugh and cry and talk about our mission and why it's so important to try to support college readiness in students. That was a great icebreaker. For the second session, we identified practices that address synthesized challenges. So this is where we take the curricular unit that was presented to us by the high school teacher, and we chew it up and spit it out, and we let them know we still love you, but if you're gonna get them ready for college, you need to, you should be. It's a real enlightening experience for everyone. For the third session, we identify revision opportunities within the unit, and we develop activities and materials to address required skills to meet the unit goals. We design concrete activities and materials in the fourth session. This is where we take graphic organizers, readings, we come up with checklists, we come up with a rubric, and we discuss ways to revise a lesson plan. And we also plan to have students who have had exposure to this revised unit to come visit the library at the college. So they're visiting the college campus, but it's not to take a tour of the campus. They're coming directly to the library with an assignment, and they already know what's going to be expected of them, and it's to give them exposure to the unique resources that we have in college, to give them some idea of what they're going to encounter once they become freshmen. And that's even if they didn't come to BCC. If they were going to UCLA or NYU, that library science information literacy, very, very important. And then for the final meeting, we discuss implementation and reflect on how we can improve, how we're going to go on and carry this out, just so that, we still have established permanent lines of communication with our feeder high schools. And some of them remain in touch. Logistics sometimes gets into the way, policy sometimes gets into the way, our IT department, they needed to make passwords available to the visitors. So there's a lot of getting people involved, public safety, but it was a success. Overall, we were very, very satisfied, and we may revisit it in the future. Okay, so the overall goals, very similar, to help students develop effective habits of mind, personal discipline, and character. Believe it or not, that's important. To help students develop skills of critical reading, thinking, and arguing. To communicate high standards and expectations. To provide clear and consistent criteria for what constitutes success in assignments. Break large assignments into component parts. So this was the work that was done in the sessions. To provide additional support to students who are developing foundational knowledge skills. and to promote collaborative learning because it is the most productive and what we thought was joyous learning. Okay, Professor St. Hilaire?
Okay. The STEM component and the college readiness. What was my role in the project? My role in the project is to share my syllabus with the high school professors. What is the reason for that? The reason for that is to make the high school professors to have an idea about what we expect from the students when they are coming to college. Now, I would like to, at this moment to talk about why I am interested in supporting college readiness in future BCC students. The reason for that, ladies and gentlemen, is twofold. One of the folds is because increasing the retention at BCC, and second, increasing the graduation rate. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about increasing the retention. When the students come to BCC from high schools, some of them are lacking critical thinking. They're lacking, as Carl just mentioned before, they're lacking reading skills. They're lacking organization skills. They're lacking when to return homework. Now, by sitting down and get involved in those situations, by talking to the high school teacher, at least the high school teacher will have an idea what we are expected. Therefore, when the student come to us, they will have a high chance to be successful in college. The next thing is, ladies and gentlemen, is about retention. Increase graduation rate. By keeping the students at BCC and the students, they were successful, therefore they will increase the graduation rate. Next slide, please. Now, why I love the idea of embedding the librarians into the STEM courses. I'm teaching chemistry. I taught to Carl, and we decided to endive, into the project. It was a success in my own eyes. Why? Because when the student has to write me a lab report, some of them they don't cite, and for college, this is a big crime. This can cause the student to get expelled. By working with calls show the students the tools or the database the library has. And in those tools, the student doesn't have to worry about plagiarism because those tools have the citation included in it. The last point I would like to mention about that is the syllabus. By sharing the syllabus with the high school teachers, they know that how intense it is when you come to college, because in college, we have things to do every week, and we have about 15 weeks, and we have to cover all those information.
Okay. So this project, the idea came from a group of librarians and educators from both the New York City Department of Education and the City University of New York's Office of Library Services. And this gave inspiration to the Bronx Community College Library High School Collaborative. So it all began in 2010, where the DOE and CUNY library systems came together to work on issues related to information literacy instruction, college readiness, and forming communities of practice between the two institutions. Just an FYI, the university librarian at SUNY Binghamton, Curtis Kendrick, he was involved in the original committee. And he was, at the time, the university librarian at CUNY. In 2012, they did the pilot workshop at the College of Staten Island, one of CUNY's four-year campuses, with one of their top feeder high schools. And for that iteration, it involved librarians and teaching faculty from history, science, and English. In 2013, the second iteration took place at the City College of New York, a four-year institution with CUNY, and they have a high school on their campus, the A. Philip Randolph High School. That's obviously their top feeder high school. For that session, librarians, along with teaching faculty from English and film studies, revised curricula units. I was involved in that iteration, but I was only the project manager. I couldn't get involved in the work. My job was to make sure that coffee and cookies were there and to make sure that the space was available. So it was really frustrating, but very interesting. For the third iteration in 2014, that took place at Bronx Community College. And coincidentally, at the time, I was just recruited, hired at Bronx to be the reference and instruction librarian. So when the iteration came to Bronx Community College, I was the perfect candidate to represent the college librarian. DeWitt Clinton is a huge high school. It is now made up of several schools, but it's one of our top feeder high schools. And I worked with the librarian from that campus, and we took teaching faculty from chemistry and English, and we worked on an earth science curricula unit. Now, that wasn't a 12th grade teacher. That was actually a 9th grade teacher, a high school teacher, but we were still able to utilize the project and implement it with their unit, even though it was just for 9th grade. In 2015, the original group, they received a grant to implement this model at Hostos Community College, York College, and Borough of Manhattan Community College. And then in 2016, Professor St. Hilaire and we applied for a presidential grant through Bronx Community College. We showed them our proposal. They were in love with it, and they gave us money to implement the Bronx Community College Library High School Collaborative. So at the time, we were not using the language of the framework, the ACRL framework. We were using the traditional ACRL Information Literacy Competency Standards for Higher Education. So for those who are librarians in the audience, you're the choir, you already know what this is. But ideally, to inform the high school participants about what we mean by information literacy, they needed to see this language, see and hear this language. And so we referred to the original Information Literacy Competency Standards for Higher Education. So obviously, the information literate student determines the nature and extent of the information needed, accesses information effectively and efficiently, evaluates information and its sources critically, and incorporates selected information into their knowledge base and value system. Information literate student individually or as a member of a group uses information effectively to accomplish a specific purpose, and also understands many of the economic, legal, and social issues surrounding the use of information and accesses and uses information ethically and legally. Then there's the New York State Department of Education's Office of Library Services. They have come up with something many of you are familiar with, the Empire State Priority Benchmark Skills for Information Fluency and Inquiry. We focused on grade 12. So ideally, we tried to bring together both ACRL and the Empire State Priority Benchmark Skills for Information Fluency. All right, so ideally 12th grade students should be able to, upon graduating high school, explore problems or questions for which there are multiple answers or no quote unquote best answer, challenges ideas in texts and makes notes of questions to pursue additional sources, builds a conceptual framework by synthesizing ideas gathered from multiple sources, develops own point of view and supports with evidence, evaluates their own work and process throughout the work, and uses self-assessment, teacher feedback, and peer feedback to make revisions when necessary. So needless to say, many students are entering college lacking all of those skill sets, and we need to play catch up. All right, once again, the goals, revise the high school curricular units to become more robust, to better prepare high school students to meet the more rigorous demands of college research, to develop and nurture permanent communities of practice among Bronx high school teachers, librarians, college instructors, and education administrators. To provide a map for supporting changes in how high school and college educators work together with librarians as part of a community of practice, and to highlight the important role that librarians play in supporting teachers to develop rigorous and robust curricular units. So this is where we relied heavily on the documentarian's work and the recordings from all of the sessions. We surveyed all of the participants, we questioned students, we did observations, and then of course, we had students come to the college, and we talked about what that experience is like for them to come visit the library at BCC and to get exposure to what information literacy is and what's going to be expected of them throughout their academic careers as far as information literacy is concerned. All right, so there are multiple learning communities. So one of the reasons why we thought it was important to share this, building off of the idea that it takes a village, right? There are multiple communities, and the model that we used was, it's not etched in stone. Whatever works best for your community, your town, your college, your high school. So obviously, librarians and college high school teachers, and in some instances, public libraries. So you can pull in a public librarian to be a part of this college readiness project. Public libraries they will have resources that may not be available at a high school library or at the college library. And it's just such an essential resource. So never forget that you could actually use the public librarians. Obviously, college professors and high school teachers from multiple subjects, high school librarians and high school subject teachers, BCC librarians, BCC subject professors. So in addition to working with Professor St. Hilaire, I have been embedded in a number of classes in English, in education, in social work. And as an embedded librarian, many of you know you are embedded in that class. They've created a space for me in Blackboard where I'm able to communicate with the students throughout the semester. It's not just the one-time library orientation visit. I am with them throughout the semester. So please keep that in mind. That any way the model works for you. All right. Needless to say, there were a number of challenges. Number one, tracking a cohort of students who had been exposed to this revised curricular unit in their junior and senior years. Tracking a cohort of students who were certain to matriculate into BCC from a participating high school. So as you can imagine, many of the students who had exposure to this revised curricular unit didn't come to BCC. Many went on to UCLA or NYU or one of the four-year institutions. If we decide to implement this again in the future, we're going to make it a longitudinal study. We want to come up with a way to scale it and measure how successful those students are doing moving forward throughout their academic careers, and to make sure that those students are certain to come to Bronx Community College. Participants' availability, the time and scheduling conflicts. So in K-12, their day ends at 3, ours ends at 5. There was a lot of interest, but there was always a conflict of schedule. And believe it or not, that was a real challenge, finding the people who had the time and energy to come to BCC, because the workshops took place at BCC, but it doesn't have to be at the college. It could be at a high school. It could be at a public library, wherever the minds come together to work on it. And then of course there's money. If we had more money, we could have expanded it beyond the 5 sessions, maybe over to 10 sessions, right? All right, so just a quick round. If we had more time, I would be able to go into the databases and demonstrate the value. Most all of you that work in academia are familiar with EBSCOhost. It's one of our sponsors for this conference. I feel that EBSCO is designed for novice researchers. Students are able to learn independently. It gives students exposure to what scholarly communication is, what the research process is, what thinking critically is, what information literacy is. I use EBSCO in all of my library orientations, and we try to expose high school teachers and perhaps even extract scholarly literature so that students or the teachers could take that literature back to the high school. CQ Researcher, many of you will probably know, this is a social science database that indexes social science reports that are comprehensive. They're made up of visuals, charts, graphs, statistics, bibliographies, a pro and con, timelines, lists of organizations and websites. The research is already done for them. It is a powerful database in that it supports multiple learning styles. So my second master's is adolescent education, students with disabilities. And if I see a resource that I see can support multiple learning styles, I'm gonna hop right on it. And CQ Researcher is perhaps one of the best teaching resources to use. So World Book, Gale, any encyclopedic database we want students to become familiar with. We want students to be able to differentiate between encyclopedic literature and scholarly literature. Obviously, the more you read, the better you write, to get students into the habit of going to encyclopedias first before beginning their research. At the time, World Book online was my go-to because I remember it from the public library. Wonderful resources, it's interactive, the information is lexiled, it's designed for multiple learners, right? English language learners, first generation. It is just a fantastic tool. But in addition to World Book and Gale, and many of you already know, with Gale, the collection of databases that are there, opposing viewpoints, biographies and context. I mean, it's just phenomenal how Gale has evolved over the years. And it is definitely my go-to. And I want students to become familiar with these databases. A Credo reference is another one, Encyclopedia Britannica. There are dozens of them. But World Book, Gale, Credo now is also one of my favorite go-tos when introducing students to the research process. Infobase, formerly known as Facts on File. Many of you will probably be familiar with Facts on File. This is a phenomenal collection of specialized databases that are interactive. They're like online popular magazines. They're scaffolds that are embedded within for both teachers and students. There's Films on Demand, Ferguson's Career Guidance, Health Reference Center. We have a collection of handouts for all of you. And the databases that we used within Infobase, sort of like advertisements, but just to give you familiarity with the power of Infobase and their resources. And they're designed for high school, college. It's just the perfect, wonderful database. Okay, so I sold Infobase. Then there's Prep Step or Learning Express Library. Many of you are already familiar with this EBSCO product, Learning Express Library. Users can practice for civil service exams. They can practice to improve math, reading, writing, critical thinking. It is also connected to Indeed.com. So if a student wants to apply for or look for an internship, Learning Express Prep Step is connected to Indeed. If they want to literally look for a job, they can do that. It's interactive. They can pace themselves, their electronic books. Every library should have Prep Step. And there are versions for the public library, 2-year colleges, 4-year colleges. It is one of the most essential student engaging resource that a library can subscribe to. And it doesn't matter whether it's K-12. And then if you are in K-12, reach out to your public libraries. Many of them will already have subscribed to Learning Express and have an account there. It is fantastic for workplace readiness, career readiness, and continuing education. And then finally, we gave this talk at a conference at Bronx Community College. It was called Faculty Day. And the keynote speaker came from the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana School of Education. And that school has a newsletter called Update. And the keynote speaker, she was so impressed with what we were discussing. She invited us to publish our work in Update. And so that was the first publication. And the rest is history. So of the handouts, we have a number of handouts. And one of those handouts, well, actually all of them. And I don't know, if you could see my screen, I just want to very quickly share with you. We were able to publish this paper as you can see here, in community and junior college libraries. So we're really excited about that. And even though this was published a few years ago, obviously the content is still very relevant. That is among the handouts that are available to you if you want to read the work that we did. It's a lot more detailed, obviously. There's a review of the literature. Also, the original curriculum revision project, the white paper that was written, the project, the original group with Curtis Kendrick from SUNY Binghamton. Okay, so that was drafted and it was a white paper. If you want that, this is what gave inspiration to the work that we did. That is also available in the handouts. I also wanted to very quickly, among all of the handouts that we talked about, I mentioned that we didn't use the language of the framework at the time. So the framework, it's a little different. It's information literacy, as you all know, but the language is slightly different and it explores other ways of learning, other ways to approach information literacy. Sherry Sands, a librarian at the University of Ohio State University, she came up with this fantastic summarized tool for introducing non-librarians, particularly, to the framework. And it's just, she calls it How Information Works. And it's here. So as an example, I'm just going to zoom in very quickly. Authority is constructed and contextual. She took layman's English to make it easier for non-librarians to digest, if you will. So I'm highly recommending that you take this, use it. It can be applied in any subject, but it definitely strengthens college readiness, critical thinking, all right? One other resource, obviously, there's something called the Big Six Research Notebook. All right, what I'm going to do, because of copyright issues, I cannot share the entire text, but what I would like for all of you to do, I'm going to zoom in, and I'd like for you to take down this ISBN number 15868322220. What this is, the Big Six is a research method where it takes 6 steps, takes students through the research process. It supports critical thinking, inquiry-based learning, evaluating information, questioning information. It's full of reproducibles. It helps students think about their own thinking, sort of like Bloom's taxonomy. It is one of, if you want to prepare students for college, I can't think of a better resource than this, especially if you're working in school districts where many of the students, where English is a second language, or developmental learners or students with disabilities, right? This is it gives a visual, it makes information literacy visual for them. And you will find it to be very, very, very resourceful. So please keep this in mind. Look, it's available. I couldn't provide this as a handout, but I've given you the ISBN number. So please refer to that. It's just such a fantastic tool. All right, I think we're now ready for questions from the audience. We'll do our best to answer those questions if there are any. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now.
The questions are all in the Q&A. Can you see it, Carl?
All right, so I was hoping, let's see, oh boy, I thought that somebody would,
I'd be happy to read them to you. Or
right.
Caitlin.
Love the idea of critiquing the high school units. I find that my kids, AP, university, and high school courses often don't seem very college-like. I'm wondering if there were issues with restraints high school teachers have, such as fitting things into standards, or yes, they talked about that. Almost every teacher that we worked with actually discussed those challenges of trying to engage students in this way. So yeah, we're not alone. All of us are dealing with it, which is why there's so much interest in this project. And then of course, aligning those standards, aligning everything with the New York State standards. Yeah, that was very, very problematic for many people. All right, let's see here. How do you find high school instructors who were supportive of the idea? I imagine the lesson plans are very set and can be difficult to squeeze something else into their curriculum. So yeah, when marketing this, when we wanted to recruit high school librarians, we put in the language we indicated that we're looking for people who have a genuine interest and are willing to put in the time and energy that it takes to revise a curricular unit. And so there was great interest, but there was always a conflict with schedules. And so that's the reason why we were not able to get as many participants, because there was confusion. Excuse me, my phone going off. How unprofessional. All right. Oh, one of my colleagues, Professor Lawton. Considering the obvious link from high school to college, is it safe to say that interactions with our students should begin earlier in the educational journey, even prior to high school? Engaging with students multiple times a year in multiple formats for multiple years, I think would make for better transition to college. Is it safe to say that we should also be looking at the K to 7 students? Absolutely. The earlier that you can implement some sort of a college readiness practice, the better, right? The sooner we're able to expose K to 12 to the kinds of things that they're going to be experiencing once they get to college, the better. Obviously, when some students come to college, they discover that not all college professors are as engaging or as enthusiastic and won't necessarily be as supportive. Their philosophy is that you've made it to college. I shouldn't teach you I don't have to teach you what a thesis statement is. You should already know what that is. Obviously, and there are many schools here in New York that do that, starting as early as elementary school. But yeah, if you can get through all of the administrative layers and all of the logistics, and if everything works out fine, the sooner you're able to implement something like this, the better it is going to be for students.
Okay,
Go ahead,
can I say
Professor.
one thing when you're done? One thing I would like to say about that, I always think the earlier the better. As somebody mentioned about, if it's good to start to teach the library skills or the citations, the earlier the better, because from the way I only talk to for myself, the way I see things, everything is linked. If you start in the elementary school, it will be beneficial for the teacher who's going to teach on the high school students. But if you start at the, I mean, those students who's coming from elementary school to high school, they have that skills. Now it will be beneficial for us as university professors. Therefore, I don't have to teach them the basic skill, because no matter what, as a teacher, we still have a full load. We have to cover those information, because after they finish to take my class, they have to go to the next class. I'm responsible if I don't cover all those informations. Therefore, it will make our life easier.
And I also wanted to just piggyback and to support Professor St. Hilaire through all of this. When you're able to find a non-librarian who is open to participating in this, that is a winner. And I need to praise and thank Professor St. Hilaire for embracing the library and understanding our value. So we are always open to having our non-library colleagues on board with information literacy. Many of them get it, many of them don't. And so very, very grateful for that. All right, so I see something from Karen. As a mom of 3 children who attended a respected school district, I noticed that they left high school without much knowledge about how to use databases. Once in college, they received no database instruction from their professors either. Have you done any follow-up studies to see if your collaboration has created more student interest in going into the databases instead of falling back to Google? Well, for the students, for the professors or the high school teachers who were involved, when they brought their high school students to the library, the BCC library, we were able to sort of keep track. But those, somebody said AP, we want to reach all students. Obviously, students who are high functioning, the AP students, what we used to call gifted and talented, they're naturally enthusiastic and they get it. But unfortunately, we're not reaching a lot of students. That is a real problem. I don't understand why there's not more information literacy incorporated into curricula at the secondary level. And so we need to work to do what we possibly can to reach those students, to reach those faculty members, to let them know that these resources are available. Sometimes they're just not aware of things like the New York Online Virtual Library. Many of you know what Novel is. It's a fantastic free resource. whatever school district, anyone, if you are attached to a school or a school district anywhere in New York online virtual library. It's free, and there are a collection of databases, both encyclopedic and scholarly, opposing viewpoints in context via Gale is in novel. All right, so please keep that in mind. And yes, it speaks to the work that needs to be done, that needs to continue to happen. Okay, an anonymous attendee asks, what was the name of the grant that you applied for this collaborative project between university stakeholders, school stakeholders, community stakeholders, public libraries? Can you talk about this process? So at Bronx Community College, and with the City University of New York, although it's one university, each campus is its own entity. And at Bronx, there's a fund, it's a grant called a presidential grant. And when you work in academia, we are required, if you're on the tenure track, you have to publish, you have to do research. It's publish or perish. They need to see scholarly activity. That is a part of your job. You need to be doing some sort of scholarly work. So on the tenure track, you're looking for an opportunity to get published. And I saw this model put together by Curtis Kendrick and his colleagues as an opportunity to take advantage of what we needed to do as professors on the tenure track. So we applied for the presidential grant, and every semester or every year, faculty across campus from every academic discipline, the work that they're doing, whether they're in chemistry or education or paralegal, that you have to be doing some sort of research work that's done, whether it's research, any type of, you can get a grant, you can apply for a grant. So we wrote the grant, there was a budget. If you read through the paper, it answers a lot of the questions, and you'll see a breakdown of the budget. But we wrote a grant, and we said we would like to apply for this grant to implement this model here at Bronx Community College with our feeder high schools. The administration, the grants office, they thought this was perfect. We have a lot of struggling students at BCC. We lose a lot of students because of academics, because they're ill prepared. They're not getting the exposure they should have had in K-12. And so they're coming in. Sometimes they haven't written a research paper since they were in the 11th grade, and they skip a grade, and then they come, and now you got to write a research paper with an abstract and a thesis statement, and you're going to do MLA and APA, and it's all foreign to them. And they're like, wow. And we find ourselves trying to get them caught up. And so because of the number of students that are coming in with, I hate to use the word remediation, but need support, the school is looking for any idea or anything that could help support student improve graduation rates, student retention rates, and help students do well academically. We actually got 2 grants for this, didn't we, Dickens? We got 2 grants. There was one, the presidential grant, and then with the City University of New York, our union, there's something called the Professional Staff Congress. It's our union, and there's money, there's funding opportunities through there. And you can apply for grants if it's related to research that supports your discipline, the work that you're doing. And there are librarians on those committees as well. And so we were able to get another grant to carry this over 2 semesters as well. There's tons of money out there. There's lots of money. Talk to the grants office at your college. If you're at a high school, reach out to the librarian, or you could reach out to someone in the English department at the college and university and see if they have a grants office and see if they would be interested in embarking on this. A lot of this is reaching out. A lot of it is just sending an email. I don't know, there's a high school called the Vanderchilds in the Bronx. There's a librarian over there. I don't know her personally, but I know that she will have an interest. If I say college readiness, preparing your students to come to Bronx Community College, from the library's perspective, she's going to be more than open to participating. Also, because of technology, you don't necessarily, we met in person for our workshops, but as we are learning, we could do this type of work via Zoom. So in a way, it sort of makes things a lot easier. And many of you in higher ed are probably, I don't know, we took a huge hit from COVID. We lost a lot of students. And so now more than ever before, and when I say that students struggled with the technology, and we just lost a lot of students, lost a lot of funding. But I think now is the time to take advantage of this technology to collaborate and to support student success so that when they come to college, it won't be so foreign to them when we say information literacy. All right, someone says, how are we doing on time?
Caitlin, we're doing good?
You're good. Yeah,
oh.
the next session starts at 11. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, somebody says, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I see Allison Fisher says, do you think you should start teaching citation skills at an earlier age, say middle school? By all means. When I taught K to 12, I would have multiple copies of a book, maybe 25 copies of any book, but just the same book. And I would literally ask students on a separate sheet of paper, I want you to cite the author. I'd like for you to cite the title. I'd like for you to cite the copyright date. And they didn't understand. In other words, I want you to look at that boring page that no one looks at, right? And then I would create posters, literally posters within the scaffolds, visuals for students. You know, and I literally had Long Island University, their library school and their library, they came up with this color-coded citation guide. And it was such a fantastic, students completely got it. So author's name is red, title of the book is in purple, copyright date is in green, and that it worked for them. I took multiple copies of that, laminated them, and then literally affixed them to the tables in the library so that when they sat down, I wanted them to become familiar with the language, right? But there's something else. Start teaching them annotated bibliographies now. That I can't stress enough. A lot of professors want students to develop annotated bibliographies, and they have no idea how to begin. They will know, and then they can do the research. Okay, they know how to get to EBSCO, they know how to find an article, but they don't know how to read. And when I say that, the idea of discussing someone else's work, okay, that process, they need exposure to that as soon as that instill it now. The idea of critiquing, so in other words, book reports, right? But instead of book reports, give them the language in K to 12. If I were teaching 8th and 9th grade, they would hear bibliography, annotated bibliography, citation, modern languages. Our jargon is intimidating within it, and you need to make it a lot easier. So start giving them that exposure now. If you are in a K to 12 setting and you have the privilege of having your own library, your own space, make that place visual. Right? I used to put maps on the ceiling when I taught K to 12. So for the students who get to daydreaming, they have something to look at and learn. I wanted it to stick so that when they got to their English class and the teacher says bibliography, they're like, oh, that's what Professor Carl was talking about, right? So yeah, the sooner, the better. This needs to happen. The sooner, the better. And I believe that annotated bibliographies definitely support critical thinking in multiple ways, in so many ways. The research paper handbook or the research notebook, that please, if you took down the ISBN, take an investment. All you need to buy one, make multiple copies for your students. That will get, it's a graphic organizer. Also, the CRAP website evaluation checklist. Okay, so I can't speak enough. Every high school teacher that participated in this, they swear by it. I told them, go back to your campuses, make multiple copies, have them available to students, sample research papers. So Diana Hacker, rest her soul, she wrote books on writing at the college level. She has sample research papers in MLA, in APA, in Chicago Turabian. Make hard copies of those and have those available in the library, or if you are partnering with the English, encourage, if you're a librarian in K to 12, encourage your English professors and social studies too, or English teachers, to have copies of these scaffolds available. They need to see it, hear it, become familiar with it, so that once they get to college, remember, life gets in the way. In addition to all of these new responsibilities, you know, they're now working, some of them are now parents, it changes. And students who were once considered very bright, now they're in college, they're not so smart. Now, it's not that they're not smart, it's that they got so many other things on their plate. So we want to try to make that as simple for them, make the transition to college as simple for them as possible. You know, even if you're working in a junior high school, you can invite a high school librarian, I'm sorry, a college librarian to come visit and talk. And the whole discussion will be, when you get to college, you all are going to college one day, right? You're going to have to do this, right? And then have English teachers there on that discussion. So it takes a village. It takes a village, and now more than ever before, we need to be working collectively. All right. So Professor Lawton, yes.
Carl, I would like to say one thing, very quick. I believe repetition is the key. If you start to repeat things at the early age, it will stick to the kids or to the students' heads, and therefore when they move forward, they will get familiarized with it. When you get familiarized with something, there is no fear anymore. Therefore, you're willing or you're ready for the challenges. Because somebody asked about how we're going to navigate the negative effect of, for example, I'm teaching chemistry. When the student come to me with a lacking of anything, I never said, okay, forget about it. I said, you know one thing, I want you to keep in mind, you're going to do more work than your peers. If you're willing to do it, I'm with you. Tell me right now, why didn't, if you're ready to do it, I'll help you. But we have a lot of work to do.
One of the anonymous attendees asked, was there any tension between pedagogical versus content focus or background knowledge in the workshop conversations between high school teachers and college professors? Absolutely. So in our first session, when we were showing our vulnerable selves, Professor St. Hilaire and the high school teachers that shared their units, you know, we all have our own philosophy and ideas on how to approach pedagogy, on how to engage all students. And, you know, we disagreed, but we agreed to disagree. And there were sessions where, I mean, we're all respectful of one another. And we indicated when marketing this to try to recruit that the participants needed to be prepared to disagree, needed to be prepared to be vulnerable. You needed to be prepared to share your syllabus or your curricular unit, and be prepared to receive constructive criticism for the sake of improving college readiness. You know, so as adults, we needed to put our differences aside and come together to try to be all on the same track. And that wasn't necessarily easy. We could have used more time, definitely. So with us, because we only had 2 hours, we needed to really try to nip that in the butt to the best of our ability. And that was the job of the group facilitator. And by the way, yeah, everyone that got paid, the high school participants, they got paid $50 an hour. The documentarian, she got, was it $25 an hour?
Yes, $25 an hour. And
the group facilitator, I believe she got $65 an hour.
$65 an hour.
Right, and then we also bought food and things like that. Okay, the NEA, UFT, interstate educational entities could be sharing. So, yes, absolutely. Thanks, Leroy. All right, I don't know if anybody saw that. He says the American Federation of Teachers, NEA, National Endowment of the Arts, UFT, United Federation of Teachers, and our state educational entities could be starting, could be a starting site for possible grants. Please, please, by all means, you have the white paper that has Curtis Hendricks' contact information. He is one of us. He is our colleague. He's the university librarian at SUNY Binghamton. Believe me, he will know where to find money, okay? And he is he's our peer. Just because he's a university librarian, he's very down to earth, and will be very happy to know that the work that he and his colleagues began is still being talked about, all right? That's what this is all about. I'm wondering, so I think, were we able to get all of the questions? I believe that was all of the questions. I think I saw one.
I think you covered.
I would like to say one more thing. Can you have a minute? One thing I would like to add is this, and I know I was teaching in high school before I decided to teach in college. They're pretty much to the audience, I know what's going on. I know some of my friends, when they speak to me, they said, "Oh, Dickens, you forget about high school." No, I don't. I teach in high school. I know what is at stake. But now I'm on the other side of the spectrum. I know what is happening. Therefore, we not criticize anybody from high school. What we try to do is put our head together, find how we can fix what is happening. By doing that, our life will be easy. Our life will be easier for all of us, not only for us, for the student as well.
But most importantly, for the students. So in other words, instead of K to 12, why don't we start thinking K to 16, right? And we can somehow, if once we establish that and get through all of the bureaucracy, because you know what that is, right? We can align curriculums much better. If there's cooperation from all involved, we need to try, again, make it more seamless from K to 16. Begin communicating, reach out. And for the college librarians, I know how busy we are, especially if you're on the tenure track. If you have an interest in this type of work, you can reach out to one of the high schools, reach out to one of the junior high schools, invite them for a class visit, not to visit the bursars and this is the registrars and this is where the dorms are. No, come to the library. And you'll get a lot of responses, a lot of people that are open to that work. And now that I hope we're back to normal in a year or so. You know, a lot of this work is a lot better when we're able to do it face to face. So let's just hope and pray for the best moving forward. Any other questions or things that I might be able to answer? You have my contact information in the PowerPoint. If anybody wants the PowerPoint, our emails are there. But please feel free. We're also working on another paper right now. We wrote another grant where we revised a curriculum, the Chemistry 12 course. So Professor St. Hilaire teaches Chemistry 12. That class has a history of students that were failing and dropping out. And we came up with a way to redesign it by using peer mentors. And then there was a library research component because although it's a chemistry class, it's considered a writing intensive course. It has a W attached to it. And that gave us the opportunity to assign a research paper and give students exposure to the library. Many of those students in that class had a library orientation in the past, but discovered that they forgot everything, right? So, and again, the model can be used in any setting. That we want to begin, if we do this again, we also want to make a connection with our four-year institutions because we are a two-year school, but our students go on to Baruch and Hunter and NYU, and we want to begin lines of communications with the four-year institutions. So in addition to K to 12, we also want to begin communicating with the four-year institution librarians because many of our students leave BCC and go on to the and we want them to see the consistency so that it's predictable and easier for them to do well academically, right? Okay.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. That was a very invigorating discussion, and your project is amazing. That is amazing work.
That's great.
I love the idea of thinking K through 16.
Yeah,
that's
what
great.
I think I should have said that at the very top. Let's rethink learning and education and teaching and do K through 16. Why not?
Yeah.
Because this is where they're ultimately going. And then perhaps we can incorporate workplace, because we know not everybody's going to go to college. So here's an opportunity if you want to focus on career readiness. Well, you got your public library, and we talked about EBSCO and Prep Step. I guarantee if you expose students to Prep Step, they'll come back. They'll come back with questions, and their questions are going to be more sophisticated. They're going to be more interested because now you're talking about their potential money, what they're going to be. That's what they want to hear. How can I make this money, right? And if you say, well, guess what? If you're going to be a cop, you need to. There's a test. You not only need a degree, but you got to take a test. And then if they get that engages them in so many ways. Oh, I can't stress enough. Please reach out to EBSCO if there's a way, or your public library. If your local public library in the township that you're in subscribes to Learning Express, then you don't have to spend any money. They're already doing it, right? So you can make a connection that way. And if you have a library card, the students should be able to go into Prep Step or Learning Express and create their own accounts. And they don't even need to physically go into the physical library. They can do it from home. That's the great thing about technology. But they need the help with it. They need
Yeah.
help with that, right?
Thank you,
Um,
Carlos.
we do have to end,
Okay,
unfortunately.
thank you all. Please, everybody,
Yeah,
stay in
please,
touch if you have
everybody.
questions.
Thank you so much. Please remember to click on the links for the CE and the CTLE certificates before we close the webinar. The next presentation will be digital literacy skills in equitable arena. How will we address post-pandemic knowledge gap in classrooms for student success? And you can access the meeting from the Pillars program that Sally